The following program, NORML Show Live, is intended for responsible adults only. We advocate for the repeal of marijuana prohibition for adults. We discuss the science, culture, and controversy about America's marijuana laws. We do not advocate or encourage any illegal activity and advise all listeners to learn their state and federal marijuana laws by visiting norml.org, NORML.org. Opinions and claims made by guests and advertisers of NORML Show Live are their own and do not necessarily reflect the philosophy and policies of NORML. Listener discretion is advised.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
From the promise of legalization.
And I think we need to rethink and recriminalize our marijuana laws.
To the agony of prohibition.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws presents NORML Show Live, Marijuana Nation. Now, here's your host, NORML's Outreach Coordinator, Radical Russ Belville.
Good afternoon, tokers and tokettes. It is Wednesday, September 1st, 2010, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Thanks for joining us for the next 120 minutes of news, talk, interviews, information, music, comedy, and more by, for, and about the cannabis community. We're coming to you live from Rolla J Studios in beautiful Potland, Oregon, home of the 2010 NORML National Conference, taking place in just 8 short days, September 9th through 11th, right here in Portland, Oregon. We're going to have a ton of fun. Also joining me here in the studio, our engineer, the man keeping it all running, Ganja John.
Hello, Russ. How are you doing today?
I'm freaking out, realizing how close NORML Conference is.
Oh, God.
We got a lot of work to do. Oh, boy, it's going to be a good time. Also joining us in our virtual studio in Astoria, Oregon, my good friend and half sister, Cannabis Carrie.
Or not.
Or not? Oh, my goodness. Have we not had Carrie today? We're all plugged in. We'll have to get that figured out on break. We're having another one.
You'd think after all these months that we've been doing this with Carrie, we'd figure it out already. But no, the internet is a harsh mistress, my friends.
The internet is a strange place sometimes. Let's see if I just have something muted over here that maybe I need to unmute. No, everything's working just fine.
Well, we'll get Carrie for the news.
Yeah, all right. Also coming up on today's show, we've got your Irie Wednesday Daily Toker Tunes at 20 after the hour. We're going to go world music today to Senegal, Africa, and get some music from Cheek Lo, a song called Jam. I saw his album cover and had some smoke rising from the album cover, so I figured he's down.
He's down.
At 30 past, we are going to have our conversation with Dr. Mitch Earlywine. That's right, Ask Dr. Mitch in our Cannabis Science, where you can call in or text in and get your questions answered on the history, the science, and the culture of marijuana. A great segment. Everybody always looks forward to that. And at the end of the show, we'll be doing my radical rant. I'm going to talk about the various ways our privacy rights, our civil rights, have been infringed by this war against hemp, something that'd be really hard to explain to the founding fathers. In our second hour, which is our live hour only, not included on the podcast, you'll get to hear us talking a little bit more. Carrie's got some stupid stoner stories that we're going to go over in the second hour, if we can get her connected. And we've also got a little bit on the NORML conspiracy theory, the theory that NORML really doesn't want to end marijuana legalization because we want to keep it illegal.
Because we're the National Organization for Really Mean Liars.
Really mean liars. We'll talk about that and more coming up on NORML Show Live. Stick around.
You're listening to NORML Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation.
The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, or NORML, invites you to our 39th Annual National Conference, Legalization, Just Say Now, Thursday, September 9th through Saturday, September 11th, 2010, at the opulent Governor's Hotel in downtown Portland.
The war on drugs has been a core failure, and I think that we need to rethink and reformalize our marijuana laws.
Extend your visit through Sunday, September 12th, and you can
Also attend the free 2-day Portland Hempstock, the largest outdoor cannabis and music festival in Oregon.
I inhaled frequently. That was the point.
Just Say Now. The NORML National Conference, September 9th through 11th in Portland, Oregon. Details available on the web at norml.org/conference or by calling 202-483-5500.
Are you or is someone you know a marijuana?
If you like what you hear and would like to donate to the cause, send your check or money order to NORML Show Live, 1600 K Street Northwest, Suite 501, Washington, D.C., 20006. Your donation is a tax-deductible gift to the NORML Foundation and will be used to help support this online media. Thank you. Medical marijuana, industrial hemp, consumer cannabis. It's time for this week's NORML News with Cannabis Carrie.
A Sacramento, California TV station has decided to run a television ad for a medical marijuana dispensary. It is believed to be the first ever television ad for a medical cannabis dispensary. The ad features testimonials from medical cannabis patients, but the ad does not have a picture of any marijuana and the word marijuana is never used. Instead, the patients giving the testimonials refer to medical cannabis. I like that. Television is ultimately about the advertising dollars that pay for the programming, and these legitimate businesses are finding their way into the mainstream, including ad revenue dollars. The Sacramento's Fox affiliate KTXL will play the 30-second ads paid for by Sacramento-based Canacare and produced by KTXL. Text along the bottom of the advertisement indicates that cannabis can be used in the relief of many diseases and illnesses, including diabetes, HIV, hepatitis C, and hypertension, among others. Unlike other medication-based advertising, the ad lacks the quickly read 10-second warnings of all the terrible things that may happen to you if you actually use it for symptoms of diseases. Then, of course, other than the possible governmental interference and harassment, there just aren't that many terrible side effects.
Well, this is one of these cases of good news, bad news, because I'm really excited that we get a medical marijuana dispensary ad on the television, to bring this message out to people about medical marijuana and to show that cannabis businesses are just like any other business. We deserve to be heard. I mean, I have cases here in Oregon and in California as well where we found banks and credit unions that don't want to work with our businesses. For example, we've told the story of PayPal getting rid of California NORML and Celeb Stoner's support of PayPal because those websites would take ads from places that are clinics for medical marijuana. So, and their quote in there was, "We don't want to do business with those type of businesses," right? So PayPal doesn't want our business. The Unitas Credit Union here in Portland, Oregon. This is a pretty stunning thing. They came out to the Oregon NORML meeting and pledged, we want to help patients. We want to give patients the opportunity to have their business and their credit unions and their checking account business here. And the Unitas Credit Union just rejected the accounts for the Cannabis Cafe and for Alternative Medical Choices, a new medical marijuana referral clinic. So for Canacare to be able to get their dispensary ads in California is a step in the right direction. Here's the bad news side of it. The money that will be made by Canacare selling marijuana through their dispensaries to these people who see these ads will be taken by Lynette Davies and used to fight against Proposition 19, legalizing for the 80% of California's 3 million cannabis users who are not Prop 215 patients. So enjoy the fact that there is an ad out there, but don't patronize that business, as they're going to take your money and use it to fight against legalization.
The New Mexico Department of Health is moving to increase fees on medical marijuana producers to help fund the administration of the state's program. Health Department spokeswoman Deborah Busmeyer said that the department wants to increase the application fee on would-be growers of medical marijuana from the current $100 to $1,000 and also establish a new annual fee on the licensed nonprofits that grow medical marijuana. The new fee would be equal to 7% of the producer's total total annual gross receipts. The new fees will help the program be completely self-funded. According to Busmeyer, up till now, the New Mexico program has needed additional funding from other health department programs. Other changes proposed in the New Mexico medical marijuana program include testing samples of producers' medical cannabis for contaminants, such as mold or bacteria. A revision in the bill would also keep confidential the names of medical practitioners who certify patients. Keeping doctors' names confidential would protect the integrity of the program and the safety of those practitioners who refer patients to the program. New Mexico doctors can certify that someone has one of the 16 approved conditions and that a standard treatment doesn't work. Then a patient is allowed to apply to the state program. The agency is proposing open and closed enrollment periods for considering new producers. Busmeyer said nearly 50 applications are pending, and allowing new ones only at certain times would let staff focus on priorities and would speed up the process. So, quote, no one is waiting too long to hear back from us, unquote. The health department licensed its first grower in March of 2009, and New Mexico now has 11 of them, including 6 approved in just July. Prospective growers undergo painstaking screening. Each producer is limited to 95 plants and seedlings and an inventory restricted to current qualified patient needs. Revisions also would clarify that producers and patients may possess marijuana seeds. Patients licensed to produce for themselves could obtain no more than 16 seeds from a nonprofit producer in a 3-month period. The state currently has 2,250 active medical cannabis patients. 1,022 of them are licensed to grow their own supply. The agency will propose these new fees and regulations at a September 30th hearing in Santa Fe.
You know, I wonder what's so difficult for New Mexico being able to balance the books with regards to their state program. I know here in the state of Oregon, it's a $100 fee for patients to sign up for the program, $20 if they are low income. And the program always has a surplus. They always have plenty of money. In fact, the money gets taken away by the state for other purposes to help balance other budgets. We've seen similar things happening in Montana and Colorado, where these state programs run great surpluses, and the state then comes and takes some of that money for other things. So I wonder what the problem is in New Mexico, where they're not able to run their state program and have it be self-sufficient. I wonder if it's a lack of access for patients or making it too hard for there to be patients. In the cases of Colorado, Montana, and Oregon, we've seen a great increase in the patient rolls into, 5 digits, 36,000 here in Oregon, 100 and some odd thousand in Colorado, something like 20,000 in Montana. So that, I suppose, would bring the money in to keep those programs self-funding. But if you have a limited program like in New Mexico, where you don't have a whole lot of patients, then you have to turn to other methods to be able to raise that funding. And apparently it's taxing the growers and charging a whole lot more than they need to.
On Monday, members of the California Assembly approved Senate Bill 1449, which reduces adult marijuana possession offenses in California from a criminal misdemeanor to an infraction by a vote of 43 to 33. The vote split largely along party lines, with Democrats voting 40 to 8 in favor of more lenient penalties and Republicans voting 2 to 23 against. Senate lawmakers had previously approved the measure in June by a vote of 21 to 13. The marijuana infraction bill now goes to the governor's desk for his approval. Under present law, minor marijuana possession for non-medical purposes is classified as a criminal misdemeanor. While the offense is not punishable by jail time, defendants charged under the law must appear in court, pay court costs, and attend a court-ordered diversion program. Offenders who refuse to attend the program may retain a criminal record for up to 2 years. Senate Bill 1449 amends the California Health and Safety Code so that the adult possession of up to 28.5 grams of marijuana is classified as a non-criminal infraction, punishable by no more than a $100 fine, no court appearance, no court costs, and no criminal record, most importantly. Passage of the bill would save the state millions of dollars in court costs by keeping minor pot offenders out of court. The number of misdemeanor pot arrests has surged in recent years, reaching 61,388 in California in 2008, the highest level since the state partially decriminalized pot possession back in 1976. Adults who consume marijuana responsibly are not part of the crime problem, and the state should stop treating them like criminals. Governor Schwarzenegger, a Republican, has vetoed several different marijuana law reform bills in the past. Therefore, if you live in California, it is vital that you email or call the governor and urge him to sign Senate Bill 1449 into law.
Yeah, you can get all the information on how to contact Governor Schwarzenegger from the NORML.org main page. Thank you, Carrie, for that news update. This is an interesting development because there's been so much going on in California with respect to marijuana law reform. Initially, we had Senate Bill 390, Tom Amiano's bill, Assemblymember Amiano's bill, that would have legalized marijuana possession up to an ounce and had a $50 tax. That $50 tax then got confusingly attributed to Prop 19, the citizen initiative to legalize up to an ounce of marijuana. There is no $50 tax in Prop 19, but that got confused because of the Amiano bill. Now we've got SB 1449, which would fully decriminalize an ounce of marijuana. This has been something that, people have pointed out. They've said, well, California, marijuana is decriminalized. Not really. It's not arrestable. You can't get arrested for an ounce or less, but you still end up with a misdemeanor criminal record. Now, this is going to be an interesting development because Kerry pointed out how Schwarzenegger has vetoed previous marijuana law reform bills. But in this situation, I think it's very likely that Schwarzenegger will sign the bill. And the reason why is he's got that pressure of Prop 19 coming. And these legislators know that if they sign this SB 1449 and fully decriminalize up to an ounce, they take away one of the talking points of Prop 19. They take away that point of saying, well, people with an ounce or less are considered criminals because of the misdemeanor. And in fact, some of the anti-Prop 19 people, the stoners against legalization, or toss salad as I call them, they've been bringing this up too. They've been saying, well, Prop 19 doesn't really save anyone from being arrested because nobody gets arrested for less than an ounce anyway, and California Senate is likely to pass this bill that'll decriminalize it fully. They're trying to take some of the wind out of the sails here. Well, if that's the situation, if that's the way it goes down, great. I'm all for it. Whatever causes there to be decriminalization, that causes there to be less punishment of adult cannabis consumers who use responsibly, I'm for it. I don't care how it happened. In fact, that's what makes introducing Prop 19 in 2010 a winner, even if it loses. There were some people that are saying, we got to wait till 2012 when it's a re-election year, presidential re-election year, more people come out. You don't want to do it in 2010. That's too soon. No, I say it's never too soon to be fighting for legalization. By pushing the envelope here, by coming out and getting this on the ballot and having a lot of support and talk about this, they've put the lawmakers' backs against the wall, right? And so now the fact that this bill has made it through and is awaiting the signature of the governor proves that putting out Prop 19 now was a winner, because it's forcing the politicians to discuss the issue and to give us at least half measures, the half measure of decriminalization, for fear that we'll go farther than they want us to go. So go ahead, pass this SB 1449. I don't care what the effect of it may be on Prop 19, because either way we win. If this bill passes and marijuana is decriminalized, thousands of Californians no longer face criminal records. If we go on to November and Prop 19 fails, well, we still have that decriminalization. But if we go on to November and Prop 19 succeeds, we improve on it with actual legalization. So that's the SB 1449. Again, check out the NORML.org front page. A couple updates, too. Some folks in the chat room were talking about my debate that I was supposed to be on with the Armstrong-Williams show today. I got a call from their producer early this morning. We had to get bumped. We had to move. So we're looking to reschedule. It may be on this Friday, so September 3rd. So I still have to call back and get it all confirmed. We'll try to get that for you. But when we have it, it will be at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So it'll be right here live on Normal Show Live. You'll get to hear me on their show, which is kind of interesting. Also, a lot of people have been in the chat room talking about Alan St. Pierre today on the Diane Rem show on, I believe it's NPR, National Public Radio. I think they have those things archived. You should check it out. Apparently, people are saying it was a great debate.
Yeah, well, if they have all that stuff archived, we might play it in the second hour even.
All right, yeah. And stay tuned for our second hour. Cannabis Carry's got some stupid stoner stories for you. For the rest of our first hour, your Daily Toker Tune is coming up next. some Irie Wednesday music from Senegal, Africa. And at 1:30, we talked to Dr. Mitch Earlywine. We're going to take your live questions on call-in and live questions in chat for Dr. Mitch. So stay tuned to all that's coming up here on Normal Show Live. Remember, our email address is stash@normal.org. You can follow me, Radical Russ, on Twitter. You can follow Ganja John on Twitter. And don't forget to check out our live blog at stash.normal.org.
I think it's about time to finish that joint, Russ.
It's September already, man. And in typical Portland fashion, it's raining. But I think it's trying to get the raining out of the way so that when the NORMLCon comes, we'll have beautiful weather. We'll see you in a minute.
After the hour. And we have to take a short break, if you know what I mean. Please support these sponsors who support Normal Show Live.
Oh, have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. Have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. If he said he swam to China, he would send you South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
NORML National Conference 2010, September 9th through the 11th in beautiful Portland, Oregon. Portland? Is this a typo? Oh, I get it. For more details, see norml.org/conference.
High as a kite, everybody!
This drug in front of me is what they call marijuana.
If we had a dime for every dime bag bought in America, marijuana would be legal by now. Donate to NORML at norml.org and support Normal Show Live.
It's going too late.
Roll a big fatty!
It's time for your daily Toker Tunes, the best in 420 friendly music from all genres that uplifts, entertains, and informs the public. Today we get tunes for Irie Wednesday, our celebration of that mellow vibe we find in the best of reggae, ska, calypso, and Latin music. Brought to you by Johnny Reefer Seed and the High Rollers in Des Moines, Iowa. America's favorite red-eyed soul rock and roll band. Now available on iTunes and CD, baby. If you'd like to submit your song to be played on Normal Show Live, send it to us at stash@normal.org. Now here's some more great independent marijuana music for today's Daily Toker Tunes.
Welcome back, everyone. We always play a little Irie music here, and it's usually some reggae music. But today, we're going to go to the world beat. We're going to look around the world and go to the continent of Africa for some music from Cheek Lo and a song called Jam. Jam is the first new album in 5 years from one of Africa's great musical mavericks, Senegalese Sufi troubadour Cheek Lo. This is his most distinctive and personal album since his groundbreaking Youssou N'Dour-produced debut, Nela Tayas, in 1996. Jam means peace in Wolof, the main language spoken in Senegal. Everybody needs peace in order to live a better life and to achieve serenity. Even if you have all the gold in the world, but don't have peace, you won't have a life. But some people say they want peace and then they go kill and conquer other people. Peace is also necessary in the home between a man and his wife, in the office between workers, everywhere. It must inhabit the person. If it lived in everyone, which would require a huge effort today, then we wouldn't be fighting all these wars, says Cheek Lo. The song has plenty of different colors and different sources. Musically, Cheek Lo adopted a bit of Songhai approach from the north of Mali in this song. The vocal, guitar, and bass were from the original demo he recorded at his bass player Tierno Sarr's small studio in Dakar. They took those demos and added percussion and trombones in a Dakar studio, and Pee Wee added his sax in London. Spontaneity is what's behind the strength of this album, and all this was done very spontaneously. This is some great world music from Africa, Senegal specifically. It's Cheek Lo with Jam.
Starfish Designs, makers of the original Gandalf.
I'm Radical Russ, and when I want to relax, I always have my 17-inch long original Gandalf from Starfish Designs nearby. The hand-blown borosilicate glass is strong and easy to clean, and the design is sleek and sophisticated. Starfish Designs are available from Bend, Oregon at a glass retailer near you. For locations, call 541-788-GLASS. That's 541-788-4527. Normal Show Live reminds you to never consent to a search. If you're holding and you consent, in most states you will be arrested immediately and you will go to jail. If you don't consent to a search, police may try to intimidate you by threatening to bring in drug-sniffing dogs or try to fool you by saying things will go easier if you consent. Yeah, easier for them, sure. Stand your ground, refuse the search, and ask the officer if you're free to go. If they still detain you and eventually find your contraband, you'll be no more busted than if you had allowed the search. But by refusing the search, your attorney has a chance to win your acquittal before a judge. If you consent to the search, your attorney's hands are tied. You can find a list of NORML Legal Committee attorneys specializing in marijuana cases by visiting the Find a Lawyer link at NORML.org.
It's time for NORML Show Live's Cannabis Science with Dr. Mitch Earlywine. Dr. Earlywine is a professor of psychology at the State University of New York in Albany and the author of Understanding Marijuana. Now here's your dose of cannabis science.
Welcome back, everyone. 30 after the hour, and we once again go out to Albany to speak with Dr. Mitch Earlywine. Dr. Mitch, how you doing today?
Having a great day.
Oh, are you looking forward to the conference? We should be seeing you next week, right?
I'm jonesing for it.
That sounds good. Oh, so before we get started, we want to let everyone know this is our chance to ask you questions on not just the science of marijuana, but the history, the culture, any urban legends or stories you've heard about marijuana. Dr. Mitch has probably studied them or read about them, and we can get those questions answered right away. You can ask them via chat, and Carrie will get them posted back to me. You can call in at 971-533-7111. Before we take any calls, though, let's give Dr. Mitch a chance to inform us if there's any new late-breaking news or studies we need to know about in cannabis science.
Some amazing new data have come out of Canada showing that with remarkably small doses, you can still get some relief from pain and some improved sleep from good old cannabis. And I just wanted to emphasize that this is essentially some of the smallest doses I've ever seen and still getting these improvements. And anybody who's concerned about, oh, hey, I don't want to hit it too hard, but I do feel like it would help me, by all means, try that little baby hit first, and odds are high it can really help.
Yeah. Was this out of the McGill University study?
Exactly. Both the main guy is at McGill, and they've done some amazing research there in folks with neuropathic pain, but I'm quite sure this would generalize to all of us.
Yeah, we covered a little bit of this on the news yesterday or the day before, and I was kind of remarking it was amazing because it was coming out of CBS News. You know, we always talk about how it's so rare that you ever hear any good news about marijuana in the mainstream media, but it seems like they're getting braver. Are you finding that? Because I know you do a lot of media appearances, and it oftentimes feels like it's always 2 or 3 against 1, but now it seems like our word is getting out there and they want to hear our side more.
What's funny is literally in 2003, I would be on the media and people would say, come on, does cannabis really have any medical uses? And now they say, well, we know it has medical uses, but what about this? What about that? So I feel like the foundational assumption has changed, and man, that is a wonderful, wonderful sign of progress.
Okay. Well, let's go to the phone calls at 971-533-7111 and our chat line. If you want to get a question in on chat, you have to send us a friend request on Stickam. First question here from Daniel wants to know about CBD. If we can understand a little bit about what CBD is in the marijuana plant, and if there's any way of telling how much there would be in a marijuana plant by strain, by looks, or in any way.
Generally, CBD is less psychoactive than THC, and in fact, at a lot of very helpful doses, you wouldn't experience any subjective effects at all. It seems to be quite helpful for sleep, for helping protect against epileptic seizures, and it seems to have some antioxidant properties that are pretty nice. Unfortunately, you can't really tell from the look of the strain. The lore for a while was that the indica strains had more CBD, but it's so hard to find a pure indica anymore that I just don't think that that's a great way to tell. What we really need is some funding to go through, which strains create which effects and then how much CBD they have. Unfortunately, the only place doing that really is GW Pharmaceuticals, and they're doing with the mouth spray. I think it's informative. And it's, helped us understand that, say, MS patients might benefit from things that are primarily CBD, but it's not going to help us know which strains have it and which ones don't.
Okay. We've got a phone call coming in from the 559 area code. What's your question for Dr. Mitch?
Dr. Mitch, this is Destin from Fresno, California. I was curious. I have an uncle and a grandfather that both suffer from very severe cases of diabetes. And I was curious on what are the most effective ways of treating that with cannabis.
The clincher here is diabetes has a lot to do with levels of blood sugar, and although the data on cannabis altering blood sugar are very limited, it probably doesn't have any big adverse effects on that. The negative potential, however, is folks use cannabis to get incredibly hungry for sweets, and then eating sweets would completely wreck, absolutely destroy blood sugar levels, really mess up insulin, and can, empty out your pancreas fast. So if they want to try it for relief from some diabetes-related pain or things like that, it could be helpful, but they really are going to have to battle the munchies or find a strain that really doesn't create a whole lot of impact on your hunger.
All right. Thank you for your call, Dusty. Appreciate that. We're going to go to the chat room here and get an anonymous question. I guess this would go into the category of urban legend. I heard once a police officer can tell if you recently smoked marijuana by looking at your tongue. Is that true?
As it turns out, it's not so much the stick out your tongue, let me see. It's often your reaction to that question. So if they say stick out your tongue and you don't do it very fast, for example, they're going to suspect some kind of intoxication. Or if they say stick out your tongue and turn your head. So a lot of times people get confused by that, and that's often an index. But looking just at your tongue is incredibly deceptive and can't really reveal if you use cannabis recently.
Okay. Interesting discussion going on in our chat room regarding the prohibition of marijuana, and maybe I could get your comments on this. And the question is about, why doesn't NORML and MPP and the other organizations do more lawsuits against the federal government to try to overturn marijuana prohibition? I wanted to point out, first of all, that we do actually have lawsuits, NORML versus DEA. There's, is it MAPS that's doing the Lyle Craker lawsuit? I mean, there's a lot of lawsuits out there trying to overturn these things. Those gears turn quite slowly. But they're also mentioning the Interstate Commerce Clause and how it's being used to enforce marijuana prohibition. I wanted to get your thoughts on that, Dr. Mitch, on the use of the Interstate Commerce Clause for marijuana prohibition and what legal strategies, I know you're not a lawyer, but would you like to see in trying to overturn prohibition?
When I talk to legal scholars on this issue, they usually guffaw at me about this, in part because the federal government has markedly more people than we do and essentially 1,000 times more money. They can delay these lawsuits interminably. So it's really, really an uphill battle to get these suits even heard in court. The Interstate Commerce Clause, when you read that big decision that came out that cites that, I feel like I'm not projecting when I say the judges are really saying, hey guys, you need to get this law changed, but the way it is now, this still really applies. I think it's far-fetched to say you can't grow cannabis in one state for fear you might sell it in another. I mean, that's just kind of ridiculous. And unfortunately, that's really the only domain where the feds can come down and say we're in charge of this, because everything else would really be left to the states. But that battle, really admire the guys who are working on that. Some ACLU lawyers and a couple of independent lawyers I know. I think it's going to be a tough one, but one that the idiocy of it should eventually dawn on people. But there may be more direct routes, and that's attacking the prohibition in the first place, and I feel like trying to do an end around via interstate commerce may be a long and hard road.
Yeah, I always look at that interstate commerce clause being used to support marijuana prohibition. It seems like a perverse incentive to maintain the criminal market. I mean, what they're saying basically is if you grow your little pot plant in your closet, it would affect the commerce that is being done illegally over state lines in cannabis. So they're kind of saying, you can't grow your own, you have to go buy it on the black market. It's a crazy thing every time I think about it. Let's get back to some of our questions. We're talking with Dr. Mitch Earlywine, the author of Understanding Marijuana and Parents Guide to Marijuana, and the Ask Dr. Mitch column in High Times Magazine. You can call in at 971-533-7111, or you can chat us up in the chat room where we get our next question coming from Ion Drive. Another urban myth question. Rolling with cigar papers or mixing a little tobacco in your joint provides a higher ratio of THC and cannabinoids. True or false?
Patently false. And I want to really emphasize that this is important because a lot of my Australian and British friends love to have basically hash and tobacco in the same joint. And unfortunately what happens is those nasty carcinogens in the tobacco end up getting sucked down much deeper, particularly if you're an avid lung buster hip holder. And so you're holding in the things that are actually the most toxic from the tobacco to the point where it could actually end up being worse than just smoking tobacco, because usually you inhale and exhale pretty directly when you're just smoking a cigarette. So this habit, and even the wrapping in cigar wrappers, which are often high in tobacco, is just not a good lung healthy practice.
Yeah, and aren't there studies showing that all the bad things that can happen to tobacco happen to you worse when you mix it with cannabis?
In fact, my own data on respiratory symptoms suggests that interaction is the case, as well as Don Tashkin's out at UCLA.
Okay. Another question from the chat room. V Machine wants to know, does exhaling through your nose cause any more cannabinoids to be absorbed by mucous membranes?
As it turns out, you'd think, maybe you'll get a second run through that nasal passage. And as a guy with a big nose, believe me, I have often had that hope. But it doesn't seem to create anything appreciable, at least in relatively normal-sized hits and normal-sized doses.
The exhaling part, right, because it's gone into your lungs and your lungs absorb the THC rather rapidly. How about, the French inhale? If you're inhaling direct smoke off a joint through your nose, is that a possibility?
Again, all it ends up doing is really you get an extra filter from your valuable nose hairs, and boy, is it aversive. Yeah. So, my poor grandfather, who smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day and French inhaled every single hit, it's really, really rough.
Okay. We got a question from Zippity Don't. I like that name, Zippity Don't. Does marijuana affect blood sugars in type 1 diabetics? I guess Dusty kind of asked already, but does it?
The clincher on this, and I know a lot of people are really interested on this, we don't see any compelling evidence that THC or marijuana itself alters blood sugar appreciably, but it does increase that risk of a really inappropriate food binge that will wreck your blood sugar dramatically.
Okay. Diabetics on donuts is as one of my friends calls it. All right. Question coming in. And again, you can call us in if you have a live question, 971-533-7111, or get in on the chat line and ask your questions for Dr. Mitch Earlywine. Penguin asks the question, I was wondering which would work better for Tourette's syndrome, a sativa dominant or indica dominant strain?
Unfortunately, the data on Tourette's are still at the case study level, so we've only seen individual cases where it worked, and so there's been no difference in strains. This is another situation where I would say just start out with a small dose of whatever's handy, particularly in states where you may not have a lot to pick from. It looks like the case studies have used more sativa-type strains so far, but that's really no guarantee that that's essential.
Okay. I have a question that just came to my mind. I was looking over at the stash page and remembering the post by Calvina Fay that I just covered. She's the drug warrior who says there's 120 joints per ounce. When you're doing research, do you guys have an official measurement for how much should be in a joint?
In my student Nicole Walden's paper titled How High, we decided that based on some reports as well as some lab stuff where we just had people roll tobacco joints, joint tends to weigh right around 1 gram. So if you could get 120 joints out of an ounce, you're rolling some pinners.
Yeah, that's what we were thinking too. And if you're out to Seattle Hemp Fest, the ratio is more like 1-to-1. So, okay. All right, we got another question coming in from the chat room here. Roland Reverend wants to know, and I think he's referencing the pain study that you spoke of at the beginning of the segment. How long does that pain reduction last from use of cannabis, and would it be a useful treatment throughout the day?
I would think that low dose could really help, but I want to emphasize that there are a number of behavioral interventions to help that pain treatment last as long as possible. Part of how it works is pharmacological, but once you've gotten that pain away, making sure you're keeping your stress down to a minimum and taking some time to do a little relaxation tends to work. So what I've recommended to folks is go ahead and have that little baby hit, but plan within the next 3 hours to get at least a 20-minute meditation, relaxation, lie down, listen to music time, and you'll see how far you can really stretch it. And you often find that less than a half of a gram can last the whole day if you're, also paying attention to how you feel, what you're doing, and what you're trying to force yourself to do in a day.
Okay, great questions there. All right, another question coming in about marijuana and its effect on kidney function with I guess, people with type 1 diabetics who might have kidney problems. Any effect on cannabis on kidney function?
Unfortunately, we have nothing published, and what I've heard through the grapevine is just not enough of a sample to consider trustworthy. I've had folks say it's gone awry for them, but then this was a person who turns out had kidney stones, so I don't want to generalize from that one case.
Never made my kidneys grow back. And I smoke enough to where maybe it should. So.
Yes, I don't think cannabis will make the kidneys grow back. But if it did, wouldn't that be amazing? All right, let's see if let's go to our chat room here and get another couple of questions. By the way, if we don't manage to get your question in on today's segment, you can always email Dr. Mitch Earleywine at 420research@gmail.com. That's 420research@gmail.com. Kansas City NORML, who I believe are coming out to the NORML National Conference next week, are asking what is the premise of your speech or your presentation at NORMLCon this year?
What I'm really going to focus on is cannabis and mental health. I have some new data on PTSD. It'll be no surprise to folks that a lot of our veterans find a lot of relief from cannabis, but I want to emphasize that it's probably not the treatment of choice. It's not my first run treatment. These exposure-based treatments, as difficult as they are incredibly effective. And then I just want to, continue my disputing of the cannabis produces psychosis stuff. And then other folks on the panel are going to handle some of those other issues that I know are dear to all our hearts.
Yeah, and we'll have that streaming live here on NORML Show Live, all 3 days of NORML Conference. You can check it out if you can't make it out here to the Pacific Northwest. Time for a couple more questions. One here from Apparatus Beats, who wants to know, why do you think concentrates, I believe he's talking things like hash oil or bubble hash and so on. Why do you think concentrates are so illegal, especially in California? Do you think it will ever get passed as medical in court? And I guess I'd wrap that up by saying, medically, is there a difference between concentrates and these other items? Is there any reason for them to be frightened of them?
Sure. The clincher is just, it's like comparing whiskey to beer. We've got a much higher concentration of THC usually in hash and hash oil, and in even some of the alcohol-based extracts. And so you just have to be superbly careful with your dosage under those circumstances. But the notion that one is legal and one is not when it's exactly the same thing strikes me as absolutely absurd, but obviously we've seen the government do absurd things before.
Oh, yeah, like, the disparity in sentencing for crack cocaine versus powder cocaine. They're chemically the same thing.
Exactly.
All right, final question. We'll leave this one up to Mr. Spoff, who asks a very pointed and specific Pacific Northwest referenced question. As a scientist, how many maple bacon bars from Voodoo Donuts will it take to negate the effect of smoking a gram of high THC weed?
2.
There you have it.
No. Sorry, Dr. Mitch, it's 3.
I guess we'll have to do the official testing out here. Yeah. What exactly?
I believe this is an empirical question worthy of study.
I know. I wonder what I wonder what we put together for the placebo for the control group. What do you
regular maple bars?
Regular maple bars? I don't know. Well, Dr. Mitch Earlywine, thanks for joining us here on Cannabis Science as you do every Wednesday, and I look forward to seeing you next Wednesday at the NORML National Conference.
See everybody there.
All right, when we come back, a little radical ranting. Stay tuned. It's NORML Show Live.
It's tough talking to kids about marijuana, especially if you might be a parent who dabbled a time or two in your youth. So to help you out, get your copy of Dr. Mitch Earlywine's latest book, A Parent's Guide to Marijuana. Dr. Earlywine is an associate professor of psychology at the State University of New York at Albany and an expert on the studies concerning marijuana, its effect on health and society, and the methodology behind the statistics. He is a frequent guest here on our daily audio stash. Dr. Earlywine lays it all out without the propaganda and scare tactics that parents know won't work with teenagers. He presents a rational understanding of cannabis, what it is and what it isn't, and why kids shouldn't be using marijuana. You can order today through Amazon.com or check our links at our blog, stash.normal.org.
You want answers?
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
You want answers?
You have offended my family.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth.
And you have offended the Shaolin Temple.
You can't handle the truth.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley. Radical rant.
Welcome back. 50 after the hour. Got a few minutes left here to do a little ranting about our beloved constitutional rights. You remember the Constitution? Bill of Rights, 10 Amendments, 1789 or so. Yeah, we used to have them. We don't have much of them anymore. And the latest story that I bring to you is one that's a real doozy. A couple days ago, I told you about the Ninth Circuit GPS decision, where the cops can place a GPS on your car, even if it's parked in your driveway on private property, without telling you, without a warrant, just put a tracking device on your car. So when I tell that story, I always bring up something that I call the Founding Fathers time machine test, right? Like you got a DeLorean and a flux capacitor, and you get this opportunity to go back in time and talk to the Founding Fathers as they're writing the Bill of Rights. Maybe give them some clues from the future so they could make things a little more explicit, right? I mean, they were so worried about quartering British soldiers that they wasted the Third Amendment. It could have been, all citizens have the right to grow hemp, or to grow crops for that matter. Wasted amendment on quartering British soldiers. Anyway, it's been some amazing stories that I've told over these past couple of years blogging for NORML. I mean, in one instance, I had to go back and tell James Madison about the GPSs, police secretly and invisibly stalking us and tracking our every movement. We've had to explain to Ben Franklin that our employers are allowed to ask us for our pee, and they could fire us if they don't like it. We had to break it to Thomas Jefferson that we can be arrested and jailed for growing hemp, right? Like Jefferson grew, like most of our founding fathers grew, like all the colonies were required to grow. George Washington, too, he was a hemp farmer. He was absolutely livid when we told him that hemp farmers don't have any Second Amendment rights. Yeah, that's some stories we've done on people that are cultivating cannabis for medical purposes, who can't have their concealed weapons anymore, or are not allowed to have their guns in their homes. Yeah, no Second Amendment rights. George was pretty upset about that. We talked to John Adams about citizens being silenced by the state for expressing unpopular views. The case of Bob Newland, who was sentenced in a plea deal to not speak out, to not be a marijuana activist, to not push for medical marijuana. Of course, John Adams wasn't too upset about that, considering the Alien and Sedition Acts, for those of you who know your American history. Also, the really crazy one was trying to explain to Alexander Hamilton why we had strip searches of 13-year-old girls by their principals at school because they might have been hiding an ibuprofen pill. Yeah, that was a pretty scary little tale there. So it's been really tough taking the DeLorean back in time, firing up the flux capacitor, and trying to explain these things to the Founding Fathers. This latest one, courtesy of Forbes magazine, means I have to go back now and explain to the Founding Fathers how the state now has roving carriages with wizards in them that can peer through your home, your carriage, your clothing, and even your body. Now, you remember the tale of the airport scanners, right? The full body scanners at the airport, and privacy rights people complained about that. You know, people we call Americans complained about that because it could see through your clothes and be able to determine, you know, your genitals and, you know, physical deformities, whether you're wearing a colostomy bag, those kind of things. And TSA said, no, don't worry about it. The scanner person will be in a different room. They won't ever meet the person. We won't keep these online. We won't ever store these images. They'll be thrown away. They're not very detailed. All these things turned out to be lies. They are storing the images. They are very detailed. Well, that technology now, which is run by a company called American Science and Engineering. They're a company based in Billerica, Massachusetts. I'm probably mispronouncing that. Has sold to the U.S. government and foreign governments more than 500 of what they call backscatter X-ray scanners mounted in vans that can be driven past neighboring vehicles to see their contents, according to the vice president of marketing of the company, Joe Rice. The Z backscatter vans, or ZBVs as the company calls them, bounce a narrow stream of X-rays off and through nearby objects and read which ones come back. Absorbed X-rays indicate dense material such as steel. Scattered rays indicate less dense objects that can include explosives, drugs, or human bodies. That capability makes them powerful tools for security, law enforcement, and border control. Rice adds that the vans do have the capability of storing images. Quote, sometimes customers need to save images for evidentiary reasons. We do what our customers need. End quote. Wow. So you thought Google Earth Street View was a little creepy. These are vans that can drive around and see into your car, see through your car, see what you're carrying around in your car or your truck, see how many people are in your van, and add to that the fact that they can place a GPS now on your vehicle and track wherever you're going so they can know where you're at to send the van to drive up alongside of you to see what you might be trucking around in your truck or your car. This is the America we're living in today, folks. This is our civil rights being decimated largely for the war on drugs. Now, they'll say, oh, well, you know, it's to stop terrorism, right? We gotta stop terrorism. Well, yeah, we gotta stop terrorism. I understand that. But, and the other thing, you know, the human bodies is they're talking about, human trafficking, illegal immigration, those kind of subjects. So, in the name of fear of terrorists, fear of drugs, and fear of immigrants, we're willing to just hand over our rights. Yeah, go ahead, look through our cars, track everywhere we go, look through our papers, know everything about us. That's kind of the world we're starting to live in here. And for so much of this to be an exception based on the war on drugs, realize, folks, that that's what this is all about. It has very little to do with people getting high. It has very much to do with controlling people. Having an excuse to be able to get their name into a database, to get their DNA into a database, get their fingerprint and mugshot into a database. Take, for example, a case of New York City, where we've seen the arrests skyrocket through the Giuliani and subsequent administrations in New York City. Now, in New York, it's decriminalized, right? You can have up to an ounce on you, but the cops like to fool people to pull that weed out of their pocket. Then it's public display. That's a misdemeanor, and they lock you up. And, of course, disproportionately in the black and Latino neighborhoods. And the whole point is they can use the marijuana as a pretext to get these names in the system, to get these fingerprints in the system, to get these social security numbers in the system. And in fact, another story out of New York that was really shocking this year was how the governor, Patterson out there, was riling up the mayor, Bloomberg, of New York City because Patterson was going to sign this bill that dictated to police that they couldn't just go around neighborhoods and collect the names and addresses and social security numbers and information of people just on the street for no reason whatsoever. That they actually had to have some sort of probable cause to do this. This is what's happening to our civil rights, and there's not a single right in the Bill of Rights or even the subsequent amendments, very few of them, in fact, that have not been touched by this war on drugs. You know, I opened up the segment here with this joke about the Third Amendment, you know, quartering British soldiers when we should have been given the right to plant crops. That's about the only right, this Third Amendment right, is about the only part of the first 10 amendments that hasn't been squashed by the war on drugs. You look at the First Amendment, Bob Newland, not allowed to speak out. People who want to advertise, not allowed to put their ads out, not allowed to speak about marijuana. Our Second Amendment rights, the medical marijuana patients who are not allowed to have their legally owned firearms, their legally registered concealed weapons. The Fourth Amendment, of course, talking about the reasonable search and seizures, our employers routinely seizing our pee, looking through the walls of our houses, all because of drugs. The Fifth Amendment, not to incriminate yourself. Well, again, then we go back to pee tests there. Rights to speedy trials that get delayed and delayed and delayed because there's so many drug offenders clogging up the court systems. The right against cruel and unusual punishment in the Eighth Amendment, which we find medical marijuana patients suffering in jail cells and dying because they're not allowed to have their medicine. The Ninth Amendment, the 10th Amendment, the rights that are allowed for the states, the rights that are allowed for the people, continuously usurped by our federal government. That's the kind of world we're living in, folks, and the war on drugs has a whole lot to do with it. That's why it's so important that we legalize. Once we have legalization in one state, it spreads to others, and it spreads to the federal government. That's the way Prohibition took hold. That's the way it'll end. I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us. We gotta go. Second hour coming up. Until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
We love the earth.
This is NORML Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Take it on one more time. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth.